Papa told me I couldn't do a lot of things.
I feel like I'm the chosen one.
Look at this. We created this. This didn't exist before we were here. All we are is proud and passionate. I love Toronto. I love this team. And we're going to the NBA Finals. Let's go!
Nothing matters but winning.
You're going to the NBA Finals for the first time in your career.
Canada, the NBA title is yours. The Toronto Raptors are the 2019 NBA champions.
And we are back for episode 4 of Rapzville Weekly. I'm your co-host, Gabriel Chelio,
Yes, sir.
along with my other co-host,
Adam Casucci.
and today we're going to be talking about Raptors' biggest trades ever. I'm going to be honest with you guys. I'm going to say it at the start. You know, me and Adam started watching in the latter of the Raptors' history, so we have a lot more to say about the trades that happened more recently because we saw what happened to the players before and after, and we have a little more emotional connection to the trades. But we will still present the history of everything. So without further ado, let's just get right into it.
Okay, so starting off with Damon Stoudemire's exit in 1998, the Raptors received Kenny Anderson, Gary Trent, Alvin Williams, 2 1998 first-rounders, and 1 1998 second-rounder. The Trailblazers received Carlos Rogers, Damon Stoudemire, and Walt Williams.
Yeah, so the Raptors received good pieces for their 5'10" Mighty Mouse is what his nickname was, Stoudemire. Alvin Williams ended up becoming one of the franchise's all-time greats. He stayed from 1998 to 2006. Alvin is ninth in all-time games played for the Raptors, 4th in all-time assists, 6th in all-time steals, and he was part of the playoff runs in those good years with Vince Carter. And the significance of this particular trade was how the franchise player at the time, Stoudemire, drafted in 1995 by the Raptors, was essentially quitting on his team. He demanded a trade because he was tired of losing, and years later, he regretted the way he handled the trade, and he stated that early on in the franchise, he started that idea, that franchise perception, that the team was not able to hold on to their star players, which became like a common trend later on. And he was chosen as the starting point guard of the franchise specifically by Isaiah Thomas, the GM at the time, because he wanted a floor general, a playmaker like himself, and he believed in Stoudemire. So seeing someone like that walk away was big for this franchise, as he was our first ever point guard.
Yeah, Stoudemire was great for us, and it was sad to see him go. Okay, so moving on to Vince Carter's draft night swap in 1998. The Raptors received Vince Carter, who was drafted fifth by the Warriors, and the Warriors received Antoine Jameson, who was drafted 4th by the Raptors. So yeah, Vince was our first big talent. He had a lot of high potential, very athletic, versatile player on the defensive end. He's in the top 5 in most of our franchise stat leaders and record holders. The Raptors drafted a lot of solid players in the earlier years of the franchise, Kovkov and Brignani later. And yeah, and Carter, I think, was the base for us. And
yeah, he was definitely a starting point for the Raptors franchise, and he basically put Toronto on the map. He was probably the most legendary dunker of all time. His famous dunk contest, "It's over." That goes on in history. And he was one game away from our first conference finals in 2001 when he lost to the Sixers. And he definitely brought plenty of fans to the game, and we were all very excited to see him play. So this was obviously a huge moment in Raptors history, as Vince Carter is probably, or could be arguably, one of the greatest Raptors of all time. So this has a lot of significance to this trade of acquiring him.
Yeah, he was definitely our first superstar. Okay, so moving on to the Charles Oakley trade in 1998. The Raptors received Sean Marks and veteran Charles Oakley, and the Knicks received a young Marcus Camby.
Yeah, so Charles Oakley was a great veteran at the time. He was coming in at 34 years old, and obviously in this NBA, that's like us getting Marc Gasol practically. And he was great defensively. He vocalized winning basketball, and he was definitely a hard worker. That's something that this franchise always remembers him as, was his willingness to win.
Yeah, for sure. And at that time, Camby was very young, and a lot of people wanted him to stay, but Raptors management felt like they needed a veteran big man to win games and have some experience. Oakley was obviously older and had a lot more playoff experience, making it to the playoffs 15 times in his career.
And he helped us on our runs.
Had a lot of experience. Yeah. He had a lot of experience getting there, and I think it was important to building the franchise moving forward.
Build the team around Carter as well.
Okay. Exactly. Okay, so moving forward to the Antonio Davis trade in 1999. This is one of the best Raptors trades, in my opinion. The Raptors received Antonio Davis for a straight swap for the Pacers' Jonathan Bender. Gabe, you want to have your opinion on that?
Yeah, so Jonathan Bender, he turned out to have a disappointing career, and Antonio Davis became a big part of the Raptors' success. He made it to the playoffs a few times during the Carter years. He really helped fill out that team as well, him and Charles Oakley. And he's also high on the franchise stat leaders in a lot of the big man categories. I know Adam could give you some of the specifics here, but he was a pretty big part of the team at the time.
Yeah, he was third most in rebounds on the team, first most for most rebounds in the season on the Raptors, fifth most for blocks in franchise history. And he was here for 5 years and had a fantastic stint with the Raptors. Also having him in his prime, being a very good double-double guy who was consistent. And I think he was one of the best centers in Raptors history behind Chris Bosh.
He's definitely up there.
Moving on to the Tracy McGrady trade. This is another big one. Raptors received first-round pick, looking to get young talent. And then the Magic received Tracy McGrady. So, Tracy wanted to leave. So the Raptors had to make a move and trade McGrady, looking to receive some more young talent with Orlando's first-round draft pick. T-Mac expressed his feelings a couple years back about his time with the Raptors and said if he were to go back in time, he would have stayed with Toronto. And when his 3-year rookie contract expired, he was a free agent and was in a 3-team mix to sign him. And the teams were Chicago, Toronto, and Orlando, obviously picking Orlando.
Yeah, the Raptors claimed they were committed to signing him, but Tracy claimed it'd be really hard to keep him at the time. He quoted him actually saying that the veteran guys in the team didn't want to be there. And T-Mac specifically wanted to play with them, but they just really didn't want to be there. And, Toronto made their first postseason appearance with Tracy McGrady, making him a fan favorite. He was also part of the dunk contest versus Vince Carter. And he was also another big iconic player who went on to have definitely good careers elsewhere at the Orlando Magic. And at the time as well, I know that it was in a big race to go to the Miami Heat as well. I'm pretty sure Pat Riley and Alonzo Mourning offered McGrady a max contract, and they brought him down in a private jet. They brought him to Alonzo Mourning's house, and I'm reading a quote, by the way. They had drinks and they hung out, and it was Alonzo Mourning was one of the coolest guys in the league, and he still was at the time. And they're at his house, and they said, let's go for a ride. They took him on a speedboat. They brought him down to Miami. They're trying to really show off Miami to him about being a place to go. And it was definitely a close consideration, but in the end, I'm pretty sure he wanted to go home and he wanted to go to Orlando, but they were definitely offering him a max contract. And he was definitely very close to going to Miami, but he ended up choosing Orlando.
Yeah, for sure. So now moving on to Vince Carter's departure in 2004. This is a really big moment in Raptors history, and it's a very sad moment at the time. So the trade was the Raptors receiving Alonzo Mourning, which he refused to play and was bought out later on, Eric Williams, Aaron Williams, and a pair of first-round picks, and the New Jersey Nets receiving Vince Carter. Gabe, what's your opinion on this?
Yeah, this is definitely one of the biggest trades in franchise history and probably the most disappointing. Definitely disappointing to the franchise. Fans were extremely upset when he eventually returned for his first game back because he bet us, and it was the first home return game, and he dropped 39 points in 2005, and it was really iconic for how much booing there was in the stadium. And there was a long period of time where that booing continued because Carter, the reason he left and the way he left was just really immature. He said that there was upper management issues, and he basically decided to stop playing as good and started showing a lack of effort. He basically didn't play to his full potential as a way of showing upper management, like, I'm going to play crap until you trade me, basically. And he no longer wanted to play in Toronto, and he made it very apparent to the public, which I think no player should really do. I think it's really disrespectful. If we look at some of the stats here, he averaged 15.9 points per game, 3.1 assists per game, and 3.3 rebounds per game with the Raptors until he was traded in the 04-05 season. Then with the New Jersey Nets that same season, he averaged 27.5 points per game, 4.7 assists per game, and 5.9 rebounds per game. That's a huge jump in all of his stats, and he clearly was playing horrible on purpose to get out of Toronto. And from what I've read, I've also heard that he faked or over-embellished injuries, said he was done with dunking, told other teams the plays that we were about to run. that's what I've heard from other sources. And I think overall, like, I just think that's like this disgusting. It's immature. I think it's disrespectful to be playing like that and to show that type of attitude that you don't want to be a part of this franchise. And it gives us a bad reputation. And this also brought along that mentality that started with Stoudemire of we weren't able to hold on to our franchise stars.
Yeah, that's a very disappointing time in Toronto history. But in my opinion, for the trade, I felt that Carter should have stayed loyal, even though he had management issues, like Gabe said, because the Raptors developed him and allowed him to grow, being the first option, running different plays for him to be successful, kind of working on his development, and they made it a priority. It was very disappointing he left, and a very touchy topic for Carter still to this day. Even if you ask him, he's very touchy about it and doesn't want to speak about it. Also, it was a tough trade for the franchise as Alonzo Mourning refused to play. Yeah. And that's
another thing is that
sad for the franchise.
Yeah, that's another thing is that that would made it really hard for the franchise that we were kind of hoping, okay, with Alonzo Mourning, he was kind of like he was a bigger name player, but once again, he just didn't want to play here like most players did, and that just continued to give us that bad reputation. And I know that later on, like some of those guys like McGrady and Carter, they kind of regret the way they went out or thought maybe, oh, what would happen if I stayed? And it's sad that we didn't get those opportunities. We didn't get to see them live through.
Yeah, wow. I still wish Carter stayed, but disappointing. Okay, so now moving on to the Kyle Lowry trade in 2012. The Raptors received, obviously, Kyle Lowry, and the Rockets received Gary Forbes and a first-round pick. Gabe, what's your opinion on this one?
Okay, it's clearly, we all know where this one's going. We're just going to say that, this trade, it proved to be phenomenal as we gave up, we didn't give up much. And in the end, we found our franchise player. Who would have thought back then that getting Kyle Lowry from the Houston Rockets, a backup point guard at the time, we had a lot of guys in rotation. He was constantly falling behind guys like Jose Calderon and Vasquez. There's a lot of different rotations, but Kyle Lowry was like that pivotal piece that eventually found his way into the starting lineup and proved to be this leader, this hustle player, this bulldog on the court and off the court. He was very impactful to the whole franchise. He's near the top of many franchise stat categories and records. He's been here for tons of years. He's high up on the assist list, the points list, games played. He's arguably the greatest Raptor of all time. That's going to be another episode we're going to talk about. And I know Adam's also very passionate about Kyle Lowry as a player, so I'll let him take over this one.
So, yeah, Kyle had the drive to become successful, and he knew Toronto was one of his last chances to fit in and succeed at a team. Having Jose Calderon there as a mentor, helping him develop and gain valuable experience playing behind him. After Jose was traded, he became the leader and really realized that it was his team, and he embraced that opportunity. Toronto saw the vision in him being the head of the snake. Like we say today, even in the Golden State series, if the other team stops Lowry, Toronto always has a tough time winning, and that's kind of the head of the snake theory. And now we obviously know him to be the role model and franchise player that he grew to be. I think this trade was for sure top 3 in Raptors trade history. I think it was huge. Very underrated player at the time. No one knew Kyle Lowry was going to become this good, but I think a lot of people knew, having his mentality, he would become great. Okay, so now moving on to the Andrea Bargnani's release in 2013. The Raptors received Marcus Camby back, Steve Novak, Quentin Richardson, a first-round pick, and a second-round pick. And then the Knicks received Andrea Bargnani. Gabe.
Yeah, this marked an end to the dark days of the Raptors, who spent a lot of seasons out of the playoff run. And the big thing about this trade is that the Masai era had started. He just signed there in 2013. And it was promising for the Raptors at the time, and it proved to be an important change as Masai started to build a championship team. He started to make a lot of different moves. And, I don't know the most about him as a player. This is before my watching days. This is Adam's time, really, when he started getting into this. So I'll let him go from here. But I know that it was just basically a big move and a big change a big pivot in franchise history.
So in my opinion, I thought this trade symbolized that the Raptors were serious really about winning, and wanted everyone to know that if you aren't willing to play hard for the team, you're out. No disrespect to Andrea, as he had many great seasons for the Raptors, but also didn't have many pieces around him during that time to win games. I did meet Andrea in person in a sporting outlet on Steeles, AJ Sports. It's not there anymore, but it was great meeting him. He was a really nice guy. He was huge. I was a little kid at the time, so he was towering over me. Huge hands, and yeah, I spoke a little bit of Italian to him. Not fluid, obviously, but he enjoyed that, and that was pretty fun. But yeah, he also wasn't a leader that the Raptors could count on being the first overall pick, as he was chosen as. And everyone expected him to be a scoring machine and great rebounder, which he just didn't turn out to be. And yeah, okay. So now moving on to the Rudy Gay trade, 2013. A lot of puzzle pieces moving here. The Raptors receive Gravis Vasquez, Patrick Patterson, John Salmons, and Chuck Hayes. And the Kings receive Rudy Gay, Aaron Gray, and Quincy Acey. Gabe, take us away.
Yeah, this occurred right after the Bargnani trade, and it continued that franchise turning point. Masai continued to get those pieces moving of building this new franchise. And obviously we see a lot of familiar names if you're more of a recent basketball fan like myself. Patterson was here for a couple of years, Vasquez as well. They brought back some of that playoff basketball after these two trades started getting into 2014, 2015, and so on. We started getting back to that playoff run, getting that high seeds in the conference, stuff like that. And also this trade was big because it led to Norman Powell and OG being drafted through the Vasquez trade that happens later on after we acquired Vasquez. We were able to get some of those guys, and those guys are big players on our team today, and they're starting lineup guys or bench guys, and they help us a lot right now. So I think this trade was a big moment in franchise history for, once again, pivoting to playoff basketball and getting some of the pieces that help us a lot today. Once again, Adam, this is your era. Take it away.
So yeah, I thought this trade was really solidifying that the Raptors wanted to be a solid playoff contender every single year, knowing that they needed to change something to make it happen. Rudy Gay was in the prime of his career, but I still feel he wasn't good enough in terms of his skills and mentality to lead a team. Taking a lot of contested mid-ranges and wasn't the best closer when the games were on the line. He just didn't have the killer instinct that you can say about many star players do have. And yeah, I didn't think he was the guy moving forward to keep. And I think Masai did a good job of trading him away. Now moving on to the Lou Williams pickup in 2014. The Raptors received Lou Williams and Lucas Nogueira, and the Hawks received John Salmons and a second-round pick. My opinion on this were the Hawks were a great team when this trade went down, and Lou was a great addition for Toronto. Toronto always had a weaker bench usually than their opponents, and were always reliant on the starting lineup to produce game in and game out. With Lou arriving as a bench player and winning the Sixth Man Award that same year, a lot of Toronto fans started realizing how important the bench players were and their contribution every night. In recent times, we know them as the bench mob with Siakam, Fred, Powell, DeLon, and Pirtle starting the culture. Gabe?
Yeah, I agree. That definitely led the way to some big movements. Nogueira here for a couple of years, also providing that bench role. And Lou Williams, he's had a great career thus far. He's playing good basketball in the Clippers right now. And first season I really started getting into basketball was with him, and I'll never forget that flat no-arc jumper from three. And that's all I got to say about that.
I still remember that. Yep. Okay, so now bringing it to 2017, the Serge Ibaka trade. Raptors received Serge Ibaka. Magic received Terrence Ross and a TPE.
Yeah.
Gabe.
Yeah, Mafuzi Chef, come on. A beloved Raptors player for many. He's funny, he's passionate, he's skilled, he's a winner now. He's had a great season this year. Definitely a big trade in franchise history, as we let go one of our younger talents in Terrence Ross, but we thought that he couldn't produce enough of what we wanted, and it was another shift of becoming playoff contenders to working towards championship contenders. And Serge Ibaka has been with us for a couple of years now, and he really helped us put together these good playoff runs, including one championship. And that comes with his previous experience in the Thunder. He's been in the playoffs, he's been to the finals, he knows what it takes to win, and he wasn't going to miss another chance at a championship because he was hungrier now. Just like his show, How Hungry Are You? He was hungry.
Yeah, my opinion on this one was this trade was for me an underrated trade that turned out to be unreal. In my opinion, I did not like Terrence Ross, cough turnover machine, and his game because of how inconsistent he was and his poor shot selection IQ. He would be on a couple highlight reels throughout the year, but for me, he was never really a winning player. We needed another big behind Jonas or to play alongside him in some cases, which did work out well. having a more offensive-minded center in JV and a defensive anchor in Ibaka. They mixed well together. Ibaka has done nothing but brilliance in Toronto, making the playoffs every year with us, including a championship run. Can't ask for more. He is a high-efficient guy that doesn't really need the ball a lot to do well. He did have playoff experience with the Thunder, making it to the finals, like Gabe said, with OKC, but eventually losing, which made Toronto, I think, really interested in him with having that playoff experience. He didn't fit in Orlando with such a young team, and I think he wanted to win, and that's why Toronto was really, really keen on getting him, picking him up. Okay, so now moving on to the Kawhi Leonard trade. This is
big.
Huge, humongous. Okay, so the Kawhi Leonard trade, 2018. Raptors received Kawhi Leonard, Danny Green. Spurs received DeMar DeRozan, Jakob Poeltl, first-round pick. And yeah,
so,
Gabe, take it away.
First, maybe Hall of Fame status player. Obviously, Vince Carter, another, but I think it was, for many people, it was extremely tough seeing DeMar go, as he was one of our franchise players and also another arguably greatest Raptor of all time, because of his domination in our franchise through stat categories and records. He was very loyal to the franchise here for 9 seasons, and we were the ones to draft him back in 2009. And he really molded himself to be the player he is today. Because of his time at the Raptors, he learned to become a leader, carry the franchise through uncertain times when Bosh left. I always remember that tweet that he put out. So we had the chance of learning from Bosh while he was here. His departure was saddening, and we also gave up another one of our bench mob pieces in Jakob Poeltl. But in return, however, we received a great 3D player in Danny Green, who I can say I've always had my eye on and who I always thought would be a great fit for our team. You can ask my brother. I've always been telling him, we need to pick up someone like Danny Green. Mm-hmm. He can hit the 3 ball, can play good defense. It's a true 3D player that we've always been promised from Dwayne Casey and upper management. And obviously, we landed a superstar in Kawhi Leonard, who may be the best player overall to grace the franchise. And we were lucky enough to get him in his prime. And that led us to our championship today. I was one of those fans that instantly was for this trade instead of being against it. I obviously loved DeMar. I had a lot of respect for him. I loved him on this team. He had a lot of great moments, but he couldn't get us that championship after falling to LeBron, year after year. And Kawhi was like a whole different breed on both ends of the floor. He was far more clutch. And this trade basically got us our championship. He was just a dominant player. He hit big shots. He was consistent on both ends of the floor. And that's got us to where we need to be today. And I feel bad for DeMar because everyone here still loves him. He knows that. All the fans, when he comes, he gets a lot of love from everybody. And he did say at the start, he felt backstabbed by management, and he probably didn't like the organization after that. But at the end of the day, it's business, and we had to do what we thought could help us win. And Masai did that. And you know what? It paid off. He was right. He actually got us the championship from this move. And I don't think Kawhi is a player that you miss out on when you have the chance to take him, especially him vocalizing he wanted to leave. Even if it was the 1 year, we got our chip at least. We got our first ever franchise championship. So I think he made the right decision there.
Yeah, I had mixed emotions when this trade first happened and it was announced. Giving away Debo, one of the best Raptors of all time, obviously, for a guy who hasn't played in a year and his health was an uncertainty, and Kawhi Leonard. Mm-hmm. But I knew if this guy could get back to where he was in the past, there was a special story to be played out here in Toronto with Kawhi. And San Antonio did need a big man and younger talent. So I can see why they wanted our first-round pick. And Jakob Poeltl, which I didn't see him reaching his full potential in Toronto. That being said, he did have a great personality and was a dedicated student of the game and learning. When talking about DeMar, he was so loyal and helpful when it came to helping the younger players. Being in Toronto was this really second home to Compton, and we took him in the 2009 draft and really took charge after Chris Bosh left for Miami in free agency. He did feel betrayed by Masai and the Raptors management after putting so much effort in building this franchise. He was also best friends with Kyle Lowry, which made the leave very hard on him, and even worse. He then settled into San Antonio, but never had the same impact, and to me wasn't the same player as he was with Toronto. I don't think he felt jealous when the Raptors won their first championship because of how much he contributed to the process, which to me is the right approach to take in that situation. Don't be salty. He literally built Toronto here, and he really helped us. On the other hand, Kawhi turned his career around, putting up career stats and being the clutchest performer in Raptors history. He was working hard with the director of sports science, Alex McKechnie, to help that knee injury. Also, he fit right into the locker room with great characters like Lowry, Ibaka, Siakam.
Yeah.
He also dominated on the defensive end, which was DeMar's downfall, and he really made it noticeable why Masai wanted his defensive presence on the floor. He did everything on the court and led us to our first championship. A lot of players talk the talk, but Kawhi really walks the walk.
Yeah, you're right.
Marc Gasol trade in 2019. This one was another recent one. Raptors received Marc Gasol. Grizzlies received Jonas Valanciunas, CJ Miles, DeLon Wright, and a second-round pick. Gabe, take us away.
Yeah, another trade, present-day Raptors fan took to heart in giving up our Lithuanian Lightning, and he was very loyal to our team. He's been here for many years. Obviously, has a lot of stat leading and rebounds and developed tremendously. But, Masai felt it wasn't enough to take the team to the championship. He wasn't doing enough, and acquiring a veteran like Marc Gasol dramatically increased the team IQ. His passing, specifically, is spectacular. He's much more consistent from three. And this helped as CJ had a horrible season with the three ball. So having Mark, someone that was a little more anchored in that, was good. And his defense was another huge factor that, stumped JV a lot of the time. Mark was basically playoff ready. He was ready for all those situations. And I think the pieces that we lost was just made back with all the Marc Gasol, all of his tendencies and strengths. And it was sad losing DeLon. It was having a decent season. He had some flashy sparks of excellence, but he also had some bad shooting nights. And at least, thank God, we kept Freddie because he proved to be very important in this playoff run. And I think this trade was like the final piece of the puzzle on the championship run. I think ultimately it helped us, with Gasol's playoff veteran experience. It really helped us win the chip. And I think this is another big trade to finalize our first franchise championship.
My opinion on the trade was the trade was really recent, obviously happening last year on the trade deadline. I remember seeing this trade at school pop up on my phone, and people were quite upset seeing our bench mob come to an end with DeLon Wright leaving, as well as veteran CJ Miles heading to Memphis. JV was a fan favorite and was such a cool character to have. And he was a really, for real, good double-double guy. And when hot, he could really do damage. Yeah. His defense had a lot of question marks, as well as his inability to shoot the three well. He didn't have too much playmaking abilities either, but Marc Gasol was such an underrated addition and knew that his career was winding down and wanted to win. Not having the best success at Memphis that season, I felt that he'd adjust just fine to the playoffs. Being there a couple of times and knowing what it takes to win with his skill set, emphasizing he's a wing player. I mean, having the high IQ and defensive abilities that he has really shows that. There were questions around his offense, but we had the scores. We just needed his leadership, defensive skills, and playmaking to help us. Mark is also a very intelligent guy. His teammates also say that. He likes reading his opponent's tendencies. Also, his playoff appearances were amazing, shutting down Vucevic in the first round and beating the second round, and Cousins in the finals, making them have little impact on the series. And I think that's very important to our success. Without Mark, I don't know if we could have got it done.
All right, so that looks like that's all of our trades, the ones we've chosen for the biggest Raptor trades in history. So thank you all for listening. Once again, everyone stay safe during the virus and the protests going on. Everyone stay safe, do what you can, social distance, and just be aware of the things going on right now in the world. Adam, anything else?
Yeah, thank you for all the COVID workers risking their lives every day for us, and hope the injustices of the world get better. And
Okay, that's it. Hope you all enjoyed. Thank you for listening, and that's us signing out. Peace.
Peace.